Smoke and shadow dances one, under moon or under sun. Chains will break, the past will fall, from the ashes I will call. Hear the crackle, feel the spark, a burning heart in the deepest dark. Raise your hands, ignite the sky. We live, we burn, we never die. I am fire, I am storm, a raging heart forever warm. Let the world be turned to gold, in the heat my story's told. I am fire, I am free, the flame of fate burns wild in me. Let it rise from the ground to the endless skies. Let it rise, we are the light that never dies. I am fire, I am storm, a raging heart forever warm. Let the world be turned to gold, in the heat my story's told. I am fire, I am free, the flame of fate burns wild in me. Got a sky in my chest and thunder veins. I walk where the wind forgets your name. Boots full of mud, but I don't slow down. Storm in my blood, I own this ground. Rivers rage, but I don't drown. Lightning follows where I'm bound. My soul's been carved from twisted bark. I howl at dusk, I shine in dark. I'm a storm heart born to break, roaring wild in heaven's wake. Torn and tattered, still I ride with the thunder by my side. Storm heart never tame, whispers rain and curses flame. And walls won't hold. I burn through lies they try to mold. Cold steel lies and a voice like hail. I raise my song on a cyclone's trail. I'm a storm heart born to break, roaring wild in heaven's wake. Torn and tattered, still I ride with the thunder by my side. Storm heart never tame.
Turn it over. Oh, good evening, everyone. We're in. I hope everyone's well. I hope we're all good for the Christmas and New Year. We're back on the 2nd of January. Did you have a good New Year?
Yeah, great. Yeah, pretty quiet.
You deserve a quiet one, Tom. You've been travelling the globe, haven't you?
Yeah, it's about time that I had a sort of bit of a rest over Christmas and New Year and that, and just been chilling really, ready for the next trip. So I go to South Africa on the 11th of Jan. So really making the most of this Christmas period, being pretty lazy, and then Yeah, so it should be a nice one. That's more of a holiday, really. There won't be so much EK related stuff, but I'm sure there'll be bits and bobs that I can bring into the discussion, with content and that kind of thing. Yeah.
You deserve a break. So, for those who are joining us that don't know, this is Thomas Marriott. He's UK-based writer, editor, and wildlife journalist, best known for your work with the Exotics Keeper magazine, a publication focused on exotic animal care, herpetoculture, and the broader reptile, amphibian, hobbyist community. I'm sure we've all seen the Exotics Keepers posts, because they're always extremely attractive to look at. Lots of information on there, and if you've seen any of the videos that Tom's posted online as well, you can see that the music's, I forgot that was still going.
There's always something with you, isn't there? This is why we've got to blame Mac. Yeah, blame Mac.
Blame Mac. I forgot about the music. I'm sorry.
I've got stickers on the way for that.
Yeah, it's coming down.
We have
it's
blame Mac stickers.
Cheers, Ozzy. Cheers, Wilson's Exotics. Thank you. Have we got the chat working though? To this side.
Yeah.
The chat's working, which is good. So we have seen some incredible pieces of information from Tom over at the Exotic Keeper, and he was definitely the top of our lists. Donna, I never said Donna, I said Wilson's Exotics. There's Wilson Exotics there. Tom's work is incredibly great. It's published really, really cleanly, and it's really informative. And Tom gets on the ground, grassroots level, showing us what these animals need in their natural environment, and it's really good. So, Tom, welcome along. Glad to have you, and thanks for joining us.
Yeah. Cheers, really Andy. Yeah,
that's all right.
Yeah, no worries. It's always fun to talk reptiles. So cool.
I picked up on your magazine. I think it was issue 2 when it first kicked off to me.
Yeah.
So I've been around since the early days with it.
Oh, nice. Yeah, it was I love the magazine. Magazine's actually stopped production now, so that's why I've got so much focus on the digital content, which I actually really like. It means that I get to do some really interesting things and go and film stuff in situ, which is always good fun. But yeah, the magazine itself, super proud of it. Every month, some really interesting articles. I got to develop my knowledge speaking to so many different people over the years and sort of build that network, and it was a lot of fun. But you can't really compare even good sales figures for the magazine with how many people we could reach with our content. And the baseline really was improve animal welfare, bring that sort of knowledge level up, and just seemed crazy to focus on a printed magazine when we're doing a lot of numbers now on digital, and people are responding to it really, really well. The in situ stuff, getting some great feedback for. So loving that.
No, because you just had quite an interesting bit on the UK Aldonia and on Australia as well, haven't you? So really captivated people recently.
Yeah, I think that's it. It's like focusing on the species that are most commonly kept. Like a couple of years back, we did a massive survey, got loads of sort of data on who's keeping what and all kinds of stuff to sort of help protect the hobby, and to just feed into, we published this big report that was open access to everybody so that people just understand a little bit more about what's going on in our industry, our hobby, our, from, all different angles. But actually, that sort of disconnect between keepers and the wild is massive, especially for, with crested geckos and that kind of thing. They come from a really remote island in the middle of nowhere. It's sort of understandable. But like bearded dragons, the way that Aussies keep their bearded dragons compared to Europeans or even like Americans, like it's just streets apart. So having that connection, I think, is really important. And if I get to spend a bit of time on the beach along the way, I'm not going to complain.
No, I can understand. One question I do have about the beardies is how much of a difference does it make across the areas they come from? Because obviously you've got the central, the eastern, the northerns.
Yeah, so like species wise, they're massively different, definitely between, say, like Pagona viticeps, the central, and Barbata, the easterns. You can see there's an exact line pretty much where one species occurs and the other occurs over the other side, sort of thing. But you're driving through, when you get out of Sydney, you drive up through the mountains, and then it's like, well, it looks like England, you know, on a good day. It's super green. You've got like even like parts of Scotland. It's really we had like a hailstorm on the way through, you know, loads of rain. And these you've got Barbata, the eastern bearded dragons that live all the way up that sort of eastern region. That have adapted to that as well. So like your central bearded dragons have developed broader heads to stop sand from going in their eyes and things like that. So they're completely different species. I mean, in captivity, obviously we have, well, in Europe, we have like, you know, Viticeps is the main one, and also Henry Lawsoni, the Rankins dragons. And I'd imagine they're more similar. I think Rankins have a slightly southern distribution, so maybe cooler winters, but ultimately lives in like drier habitats. And then there's a bunch of other species as well that are all typically arid. But the difference between the central and the eastern is massive.
And this is the thing that a lot of people don't take into account with these animals. It again comes back to, like we mentioned with the chameleons before, localities.
Mm.
You've got one animal, but it's such a broad horizon of what it covers. It's something that is overlooked a lot.
Yeah, well, that's it. I mean, even the central bearded dragon has a huge distribution. You know, where we were doing most of our studies was in basically the furthest east, really, that species occurs. You do get them all the way through Central Australia and down into Southern Australia. It's interesting. I've been speaking to a few guys in Southern Australia that have been doing loads of work there, and obviously a lot of the studies that we've been doing are underpinned by a lot of the work that Dr. Jonathan Howard, Beardy Vet, has been doing for ages. So it gives his sample size is much larger, really. But he's been really supportive of our work, and a lot of this stuff is stuff that has been sort of found out over years. And we are lucky enough to go over there, make the observation, show people that sort of in situ footage, or you know, and have actual proper peer-reviewed kind of research backing up what we're saying here. So while it's important, I think, for people to just be exposed to them kind of environments, maybe get a bit of inspiration for the next terrarium, see that, you know, substrate isn't just going to kill a dragon overnight, you know, they'll actually, you know, that in itself is important, but having that kind of backing as well is really good. So yeah, you know, but we're going to work on a documentary there. I need to catch up with Jonathan, because there's stuff, obviously we're doing this independently and sort of showing what we are doing, but it's nice to be able to ask certain questions and just double check. So we're going to be doing a documentary where we've basically gone through the whole thing, and hopefully he'll be able to point us in the right direction, make sure it all corroborates. But yeah, it's great work and interesting stuff, and, you know, a lot of fun to make that content as well.
And I guess once you've done it for one species, you'll be more inclined to do it for other ones as well, because you have
absolutely, yeah, we've got a few bits hopefully lined up. A lot of it comes with obviously getting some funding to get out there and do it. None of this is cheap. The New Caledonia stuff was funded by Blue River Diets, so there was an investment in there because they wanted to learn more about crested geckos in the wild and sort of get that sort of just, well, overall content anyway, but really understanding, is there avenues for more products and more naturalistic life? Can we tailor some of the plants that we offer these animals? Is it essential for things like, you know, different lighting products and all that kind of thing? So there was some serious sort of revenue put behind it. But now, because we've done that, we've shown how well it works for EK, hopefully we'll have a little bit more scope to actually focus on a few more species. There's loads. I'd love to go to West Africa, go to Madagascar, go and do some of these places where there's a bunch of popular species, and actually really get stuck into it, because there's a lot of questions that people want answering, and it's hard to do it in a 2-week expedition, but at least people can see what these animals look like in the wild, and they're not just basing everything off what they're seeing on, you know, at the local pet shop, or that, you know, they're actually got a bit of an idea for what comes next when they set up their terrarium, and it causes people to ask more questions as well.
And questions are a good thing.
We're hoping to get Blue River Diets on, so Andy's been in talks with them behind the scenes, and that's one of the things that we actually approached the parent company, and they said, look, would you be interested in further brand talks as well? So that was really interesting that they want to collaborate there as well. It seems like they actually really care about the community, what people are doing and the animals, and they want to go forward. So that was really good to hear off them.
Nice, yeah.
So can we just rewind just a little bit, because I think we've jumped ahead here. So your professional background is actually in journalism, isn't it? You're not.
Yes, yeah.
You know, it wasn't, and then you've progressed to use that professional career into the reptile and amphibian industry as well, haven't you?
Yeah. So yeah.
When did you make that move professionally from normal
really came with the
journalism?
UK. Yeah, so it was like my academic background, I guess, was like journalism and stuff at uni. So I did English and media degree, and then sort of pretty quickly went off to Australia for a year. Sort of did the whole gap year thing, but along the way went to Komodo. And the thing is, I've always loved reptiles. So since I was a kid, I had a leopard gecko as a kid. Always been fascinated with them, but didn't really understand that sort of wider hobby, that wider industry, or anything like that. So when I went traveling, I started writing a blog really on visiting Komodo was my first place, and then any national park that I went to around Australia, I'd write a little blog, take a bunch of pictures of different reptiles, try and ID them, and write a little post. But it was more travel. It was a travel blog at the time, but with reptiles in mind, because I was looking for this information out there, and it just wasn't there. Like I couldn't find. I didn't really understand what herping was as well, so I was like, I want to know what reptiles live in this national park. You've maybe got a web page somewhere that tells you 3 or 4 different species, but I wasn't aware of iNaturalist. I wasn't aware of like herping as a hobby. I really wasn't connected with people online. So I just wanted to write something that I thought there was a gap for. And then when I got back to the UK, that was quite a big part of me basically getting the editor role, or I'm sure it was editor role at the time, and then stepping into EK. So having that background, that media background, was important for developing the magazine itself. But then I managed to flourish by just speaking to everyone, having conversations with all different people about different species, and that's really where my kind of development in that world sort of began. So it's all fairly recent. When you speak to some people, they've been following their biology degrees and all that kind of thing since day one. But I do think it's sort of testament to, if you lean on the right people and you make those right connections in this very welcoming and sort of quite open hobby, you can quickly learn quite a lot of stuff.
That's something we did find it as well.
We've got some really prominent people within the community, both professionally and socially, who are really supportive of what we're trying to do. And it's really good to get that support and get constructive criticism away from all the negativity and things that goes around. It is, but when you are open-minded and you have the right conversations and you're not defensive and you're not argumentative, it is a really, really cool community. It really is.
Even like some of the events and conferences and stuff like that, like you have they can be such throwaway conversations that then turn into something quite spectacular months down the line, when you're maybe working on something with somebody, or you've developed a new idea for something, or and it's passionate people wanting to talk about things they're passionate about. You end up getting to some pretty gold stuff.
It's we're early days yet, so this is only episode 8, so it's our 8th week, and we're excited for what's coming. We're excited for the plans that we've got, and I think the UK on a whole really struggles with the right information. There's not many out there like yourself who are giving that information out for people to make that informed decision and then go home, think and act, and then act accordingly. So really hoping to change that and build bridges as well. There's a lot of the community which is segregated from each other because they don't agree with the way they keep them or the way they do this. And one of the things, we had Ellie from Ellie's Exotics on last week, and one of the movements that she's part of is educate, don't berate. And I think that's brilliant. I think it's absolutely brilliant, and I would love to see more of that in the UK. And I think the mindset's changing as well. There doesn't seem to be as much gatekeeping anymore. people are willing to talk. We've got Rob Piley, who's interested to come on, who you did you did an interview with him, didn't you? And went to his place and
He's a great guy.
An amazing guy, isn't he? You know, like talk about somebody that's been around and done a few bits. You know, so really excited to get him on. We're hoping. I'm trying to get hold of Dave Sharp. I want to get hold of Lee Riley, who does UK crested newts. So I want to focus on a lot of the UK and European species as well, not just the full exotic side of it, because we've got so much diversity that we can do for our own reptiles and amphibians as well.
Yeah.
We have got a question for you. With all your travelling, do you keep any reptiles?
No, not really. No reptiles, actually, not at the minute. I've got some Tinctorius, some little poison frogs that are happy to sort of move them onto my parents when I'm away for a long time. So I'm keeping it like that for a little while. I don't think it'll be too long, really, before these long extended trips soon become less common in my life. So I'll probably end up with hopefully some collection and then doing more sort of short couple of week travel things. But for a little while when I was doing the magazine, I was just traveling off my own back. So we were going like months at a time around South America and that kind of thing, and there's just really no room for anything. So it's a shame, but it's I get to sort of, but that's the thing, is like people say, oh, you gone off and done this trip somewhere, it's really, really interesting. And it's like, actually, I just want to know how you keep your animals, because that's the side of things that I don't really get to do. So it makes nice, interesting conversations.
Yeah, no, that's great. Just running through the notes. One question. So, what have you kept reptiles before? Because obviously you come out of university straight into this and started your busy lifestyle. Did you ever keep anything at home whilst you were sort of building up to these extended trips away?
Yeah, so I had a leopard gecko when I was a kid, and then had an axolotl at uni that my housemate took back with her, and then I've had these poison frogs for a little while, for quite a few years now. So never really been a big collection or anything like that. But it's funny because I think I did the typical loved reptiles and wanted a leopard gecko for early on. Loved my leopard gecko and gave it all the time and attention and everything that I needed to do, but didn't update my personal keeping practices very often. It was sort of what's the recommended thing at the time, which was like a bulb. It wasn't even really a spot bulb, heat mat, that kind of thing. And actually over that time, certainly within that time period, because this would have been the early noughties sort of thing, suddenly you're having massive big developments in UV, and people are learning a lot more about how to keep them more professionally. And I think that's why when I look back, I'm like, well, actually, if I had kept my ear to the ground a little bit, perhaps I could have provided a better life. I mean, it was still lived 15 odd years. It was like a healthy animal, but there's ways of us improving our welfare standards. And I think it's important that we reflect on it ourselves. And I think that's why it's quite important for me to be doing or bringing a lot of this stuff to social media audiences that are younger, because you've got people that are, especially in this sort of modern society where everybody's busy and zipping around doing this, that, and the other, having a platform like Instagram or YouTube or whatever, where somebody can literally just flick through and see, oh, this is what my reptile would be living in out in the wild. My tank doesn't look like that. Why? Or, oh, suddenly this is why I need UV lighting. Bang, that's why. There's an answer there. I think it's important to get that in front of people, because certainly even with the crested gecko stuff, we're finding some really, really interesting stuff. But then, a lot of it, or some of it, was certainly published back in the 90s and stuff, but in books that nobody, unfortunately, and I love the guys that wrote them, so actually don't want to be slagging them off or anything, but they young people aren't reading that anymore. They need to be seen quick 15-second snippets that either provoke a thought or give them or answer a question. And then once they have that thought, then they can start looking for, well, maybe a magazine or, you know, a documentary or something like that to contextualize it. So yeah, like my long-winded way of saying, no, I've not kept very much, but I think that it's important to inspire sort of young people because, yeah, I mean, yeah, it's just everything's evolving so quickly.
Yeah, social media is incredible. The reach it has on it for very little input against books. You know, I barely read anymore. The wife, she does quite well. She read like 30 books last year. She keeps track of it all. And then we read with a little and constantly. But again, it's, you know, with life being that busy, it needs to be that short, quick, and it's sad really, because there is so much that is written down that people don't see because they don't get that fix. And I think that's where your videos really do hit that point really quickly, and it does get that thought flowing and the juices going, as they say. Kat's just said, Tom, I really enjoyed your video about species, natural habitats. Your special of New Caledonia real inspired my gargoyle gecko bioactive plants. Certainly opened my eyes.
Oh, good. I'm glad to hear that, because it's something, especially with the gargoyle geckos, they like the habitat is so different to what you think. Like there's certain moments when I've been out looking for stuff or herping or whatever, where I go, this is so different to what I was expecting, whether it be you know, like the habitat's slightly different, or it's super hot, or it gets really cold at night, or whatever it is. You go, right, people really need to know about this. And the gargoyle geckos was a good example. Like they do live in humid forests, so actually there is probably a bit more sort of closer sort of relation between them, well, and like crested gecko habitats in a way, but still they're very, very different. Even the humid forests and the evergreen forests are still different habitats. But it's the fact that they occupy this macky shrubland, which is completely different to any evergreen sort of forest. Huge, definitely more UV exposure, definitely thinner branches and shrubs and that kind of thing. And worlds apart. And then you look at this and you see these animals that are like hugging these tight branches, and they've even got the stripes to make them sort of blend into these branches, and they, you know, they don't have setae quite to the same extent as, you know, crested geckos. So they've got these claws that are very similar to some of the geckos of Australia that are sort of more terrestrial or typically live in grasses and shrubs. And you start drawing that similarity and you go, well, actually, these are completely different animals. But from a captivity perspective, because they can thrive in very similar kind of terrarium setups, and you might want to hit the same kind of environmental parameters, you tend to group them together. In actual fact, like there's so much more that we can learn about these things.
No, that's fair. It's like you said, you haven't kept many species yourself, but you've probably got a lot more experience with more species than most keepers who have kept them, because you've been out there, you've seen them, you've experienced it.
Yeah, there's a level of that. It's one of them things. Like for me, for example, I can say, you know, like the environment, I can make observation of the environment. I'll say that it's hitting these temperatures and we're recording this, that, and the other. But then it comes to actually the practical side of things. And somebody like, if somebody said, well, what spot bulb do I need? I could give you a good idea for good brands, but actually exact wattage and this kind of thing, like that isn't really something that I've got practical experience with. Whereas somebody with a huge collection will say, yeah, well, if your distance is like this, just whack that on there. This is the exact product you need. And that's why, you know, obviously having shops and breeders and experts that with that practical knowledge is so important, because people can pick up exactly the right product. I guess what I'm trying to sort of convey is maybe something that is slightly different, where you know what sort of parameters you need to hit, what kind of humidity you want to hit. Maybe you can talk about how there's seasonality and that kind of thing. But in terms of actually picking a product, it's a slightly different sort of mindset. So that's why it's still hugely important that I'm working with, you know, experts who have got them massive collections as well.
No, that makes sense, and I could agree with that. I mean, to be fair, I've got quite a few animals. I still wouldn't know which bulb I should get. I'll just go and grab
There's a lot of them out there, isn't there?
Oh, there are so many. But then you've got the likes of Damascus. who does all
Yeah.
the light testing, and he's quite active in a lot of the groups who will give you the information if you want the help.
Yeah, yeah, and that's the thing. And again, with the conferences, I've had quite a lot to do with Tom over the years, and we always have a good catch up at the conferences. But then learning, like, oh, actually, this new bulb will have this particular spectrum and that kind of thing is really cool, because then you start thinking more practically and how you can start creating these environments.
No, I agree completely, because it's not just put a heat bulb on, put a UVB on, away you go. I
Mm,
mean, it's like you've got the Faunalux bulbs, and obviously we're affiliated with Faunalux now,
right,
but they produce UVA1, which is the
right.
same as a halide, but it's not something many people have ever given much thought to. Then you've got your like plant growth lights, but you've got your jungle dawns, which is slightly different to a plant growth light. You've
Mm,
got like I've got RS Gold units in some of my Vivs, which are like a patio heater in a way,
right, okay.
but they give out a lot of the infrared.
Yeah,
And then you've got your basking bulbs, you've got your spot bulbs, you've got your CHEs, your deep heat projectors. There's so many things out there that
yeah,
you need a mix of it all to make it work.
yeah, exactly.
Without knowing what you're studying in the wild, we can't produce it out of what products we've got off the shelf.
Yeah, and I think that's it as well, is people, like, I would be suggesting, even for things like crested gecko, the problem with sort of where I'm coming from with some of these things is I always say, the bigger the better and all this kind of thing. And it's true. Like, most animals, you could give them the biggest enclosure you could possibly buy or make one yourself, and like they're going to use it. So, there's
Yeah,
always that. But with the lighting, like I would be saying, have your spot bulb to give you your sort of visible light and your infrared and maybe a bit of UV, but have your UV T5 on for a few hours. So turn your LED on at this time and then switch to your spot bulb to have a bit of heat during the middle of the day. And then you can also put your UV on, then switch that off and go back the other way. And it's like, most people is balancing that line between, do we want to advance this so much that everyone needs 100 bulbs and all this kind of setup, or do we want to give people exactly what they need to fit the budget for most keepers and ensure that they've got everything they need to give their animal the best life possible? So I go a little bit extreme with some of these things and say, we should be doing this and this, but at least if people know that actually for UV, IR, and visible light are all different things, and different bulbs do different things, and in the wild it all happens slightly differently, and at different times of day you're going to have slightly different ratios, and then it's an interesting concept that people can then explore and get right. And if they say, this bulb is really good, but it ends up my hotspot gets way too hot way too quick, so then I only put it on for this amount of hours a day, but instead I decide to add a little bit of ambient heat with a heat mat, is that the end of the world? Well, no, it's not. But as long as you've got a good balance and the concept of infrared, again, infrared A against infrared C, people can start exploring with that then. So I do think, like, I get to do a lot of the fun stuff really, but actually I want to turn my hand to building these enclosures and actually just doing some testing within a terrarium, because then you can really say this is exactly what you need and this is exactly how to run it, whereas at the minute it's sort of open for everybody's interpretation. But then, even depending on where you are in the world, things are going to be different. If you tell somebody in, I don't know, the southern states of America, where they have monsoon seasons and that kind of thing, to keep their humidity below, I don't know, 20%, that's going to be a challenge for them. Even here in the UK, our evenings get really, really humid. And then you're telling people that they need to be balancing it out with this product or that product. And actually, a lot of it is open for interpretation.
no, that's fair enough. I mean, I'll use my fire skin enclosure, for example, on this. I've got about 6 or 7 different bulbs in there. I've got the fans, I've got the Reptirad, and it
Mm,
all staggers. So not everything comes on at 7. I've got stuff that comes on at 7 all the way up to 11, and then goes off again at 3 all the way down to 7. And it
yeah,
just staggers it, because in the wild, bang, everything's already there. It builds up and it comes down.
yeah,
And that's what people need to put into the vibs as well, in my opinion.
Yeah, absolutely. And even the like decor and stuff, when you've got, if you provide shade and understory sort of layers and that kind of thing, depending on where the ecological niche that the animal occupies, you can work around that as well. So, for example, in New Caledonia, we were finding crested geckos. Our first expedition, we found a crested gecko in the middle of the day. But it was only, so it's 3 o'clock in the afternoon. The UVI, because it was so sort of cloudy and it was under the sort of canopy, the UVI was only like 0.6, I think, 0.7. It barely got anywhere near. It barely got past about 2 that whole expedition because it was wet season. There's cyclones coming in and it's just loads of cloud cover. So it was very different to in the dry season when we were doing at least 8 or 9 UVI by about 11 o'clock in the morning. And you walk through the forest with your solar meter and it'd go from obviously in the shade, very low, to sunny patches, and it's very high. And so, like, sort of explaining that animals still need this UV, they still need that heat, they still have a relationship with the sun, even if they avoid it, is really important because people otherwise go, oh, well, they're nocturnal, so they don't need it. Well, they would be experiencing it in the wild, and it could be that actually in the wet season they're more active during the day because it's low UVI, but they can get out there and absorb a little bit of UVI. In the dry season, perhaps they are more secretive and they come out later at night. There's a relationship with the sun that you can only really try to mimic with the right lighting, whether that animal be nocturnal or fossorial or however you want to sort of interpret it.
Cryptic basking, basically, isn't it? Where you just stick a limb out to grab it.
Yeah, yeah, there's all sorts of methods that they could be using, especially crested geckos. I mean, even like leeches and stuff, they occupy they're right up in the canopy. So some of those massive like bugney trees that sort of tower over that understory have huge branches where these geckos are, and they're exposed to like very high UVI. Doesn't mean that the geckos are necessarily out in it, but then when you look at the stuff that like Dav Kaufman's been doing, he's been finding leeches out during the day, and it's very possible that these animals are actually getting huge amounts of UVI, and crested geckos could be doing similar things. It's almost impossible to watch an animal non-stop for any significant period of time, but if we're finding geckos out active during the day, 3 o'clock in the afternoon, even if that UVI is very, very low, it's still worth providing it,
At the end of the day, it's there in the wild regardless. So we don't get to decide whether they need it or not. They should be the one deciding whether they need it or not. We should just provide it, and then they've got the options.
That's exactly it. Yeah, it's not down to us to decide. No, yeah, I like that. It's just give them the slice of nature and let them do with it what they need to do.
It's the problem with the way pets are kept as a general, is we think we know better. But the reality is we know nothing in the grand scheme of things. We know what we think we should know and what the books have taught us and what the so-called experts have taught us. When you tend to find the people who think they are experts are the ones with the least expertise, and the ones who deny the expert knowledge are the most qualified to answer here. But at the end of the day, those animals know what they need and they will take it when they need it. And if it's not provided, they can't.
Yeah.
And then you're just providing a survival scenario, not a thrive scenario.
Yeah. And I think the thing is, a low level UV tube, a T5, whatever, it's not, the only thing it's hurting is the bank account. And it's not hurting that much, it's what, 50 quid, like T5 tube. Like, if you've got, like, for example, the substrate debate with bearded dragons, like, winds me up, don't get me wrong, it's insane.
This is brutal. I've been kicked out of groups over this over the years.
Yeah, it's nuts. But then at the same time, you can sort of get it, because if this husbandry isn't right, then the substrate's the final sort of straw that broke the camel's back kind of thing with the impaction debate. It should be nowadays with the right equipment, the right everything should be there. But I can see why people are scared to do it. So it's our job to say, well, actually, this is the way actually it's been done in Europe for a long time, and also with the right sort of equipment, it's not a threat. But I kind of understand it. Whereas, like, when somebody goes, "No, they don't need UV, so I'm just not going to give them it," I don't really get that, because why?
I mean,
you
it's a
know.
bit. What I find difficult, obviously, is with snakes. The low level of UV that is required for a lot of snakes
Mm,
isn't achievable out of what we have as a product sometimes. I know Arcadia produced a snake specific, very low UV strip, but they didn't go small enough on the lights. They were more than 3 or 4 foot lamps, I believe. I
right.
might be wrong on that one, but I don't see them about anymore. I saw them very briefly, but then they were gone.
Yeah.
And unless
Yeah.
you're
I mean,
putting the cages in place and all that, you're not getting low enough levels.
yeah. But I suppose if you've got the right T5, if you just have a T5 fixture but enough hides, like animals can go in and out and, like you say, just move
Yeah,
around it as they see fit. So,
it is
yeah.
difficult. And I mean, everything needs UV, realistically. I mean, there's inverts that you could debate UV could be a problem for.
Mm,
Some of the scorpion species, for example, with the way they react to ultraviolet, but it's still there.
yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Well, it's like my frogs, you stick some UV, are they going to perish without UV? Probably not. But like, you should provide them it because in the forest, like if you go, the thickest parts of the Amazon on the forest floor, there's going to be very small patches of UV that are getting through there. But then when you actually put some UV over the top, like you do notice a slightly more just a better circadian rhythm. There's a bit more activity at the right times. Like they move in and out of foliage to come out into sunny patches and stuff. Whereas I think if you just had an LED tube over the top, I don't know, it might just be anthropomorphizing these animals a little bit. And I'm always scared to do that. But it does seem to me like they respond to it in a more natural way than just, turn an
I've
LED
got
on in the morning and turn it on.
American green trees behind me in a 3 foot
Oh,
by
yeah.
3 foot by foot and a half viv. It's full paludarium water running a lot. And I can guarantee that every morning when I come in here after the school run, the frogs, they're out basking. And
Yeah.
then by 11, 12 o'clock, once the temperatures have started to come up, that's when they disappear. 100% that like you say, it's a better circadian rhythm. And then the minute that temperature drops, the minute the light drops, then you start to hear them because they know
Yeah.
it's gone. I keep royals mainly, and I use racks, and that mentality is very, very quickly changing with what I'm learning and who I'm speaking to.
Mm.
And I want to do better, when I can do this for 15 quid frogs, but I've got animals that are thought of as being expensive, and they're in a drawer that I don't see. So that mentality is massively changing. And a
Mm.
lot of the ladies in chats today, they keep royals and they've gone straight into vivs with them, and it's just through the channels that we all talk in, the conversations that happen. And if we don't have those conversations, it won't happen.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's the thing is there's always a balance. There's always you need people who I don't know whether you breed the royals and that, but like you obviously need breeders. You need people aren't going to have infinite amounts of space. But if you like you say with your tree frogs, if you're seeing more interesting behaviors from them off the back of that, like I always think there's got to be a worthwhile kind of like trade-off where putting them in that
100%.
bigger enclosure or better lighting or
100%.
whatever it's just more fun for the keeper as well is the thing. Like it's a win-win usually.
Yeah,
The problem is
that
racks have a position in the hobby that at the moment can't be replaced. People are working towards it, and I don't want to start the old rack Viv argument because it's one as old as time that will go on forever. But racks serve a purpose for breeding. But once there are better products on the market for lighting, which they are working towards, especially with like the LEDs and with the UV and all that, then maybe people will be able to provide that into racks as well. But if you've got enrichment in a rack and you've got certain lighting in a rack, it's better than just having a sheet of paper or a water bowl.
Exactly. Yeah. Well, that's it. There's always scope to improve, whether just because those enclosures are, in a certain structure, you can still do interesting things with them. You can do, like, as you say, you put enrichment in there. You can add a lot of these are like deep enough to add UV and things like that. So, there's again, it's always a touchy one touching on racks anyway, but I do think people generally know what they want to provide their animals, and actually there's, like you say, there's always like a
Yeah,
balance
100%.
between.
And it's about what the keeper finds ethically acceptable as well. To start with, I was fully on board with the racks that we're using for the Royals, but there was no way I'd keep a tokay gecko in one or a chameleon. So there are those lines that we have as well, and it's I'm hoping to come away from the Royals a lot more and go into bigger enclosure species, so to say. We've got all the lizards we've got are normal wild types, and we love them. We've got a couple of tokays, we've got a bearded knoll, a couple of chameleons,
Oh,
and
nice.
they're all in fully planted. The frogs, they're all in fully planted. I hate the word bioactive because it just creates this false sense of it looks after itself, but but they are all bioactive for the sake of the conversation, and they're brilliant. It's definitely something that's got me thinking, and especially the conversation around welfare now being providing spectrum, which is Tom's obviously a big advocate for welfare and spectrum, so we hear a lot about that, and it's definitely food for thought for a lot of people. It really is. And when we're now not accepting minimum standard as the goal. We want to do better than minimum standard, and that is really, really difficult with myself to fight that when I'm doing so much for several other species, but not this species, because I'm okay with that. So that mentality is like an internal battle. And I think that's why I've been quite well accepted within the communities that I've been in because I'm quite open about this. Like, I was happy as Larry with my Royals, but I was in a Royal-only community. But now that I've come out and I'm picking up this more information and I'm educating myself and talking to other people who've been out in the field and talking to, Lee at Millennium, he goes over to Madagascar to collect his wild caught animals to improve his bloodlines. He goes and actually picks his animals from the trappers and the stuff over there. That's incredible.
And that's the
is
people
is next level.
Yeah, and I think that connection is really important, and admitting when we're not necessarily wrong, but it's like admitting when our minds have changed. It's an important thing to do. Like, part of the big appeal for me with frogs really is that you can create a nice looking terrarium, and then they usually thrive in there, and they're usually quite small and quite active. But the same thing would apply with a lot of different animals. There's so many different species that we can, that people are working with, that there's so many to explore that I think it's okay to be sort of interested with even like the vivarium design side of things. Like, I find that fascinating, creating all different backgrounds and messing around with different artificial rocks and that sort of thing. Like, there's so much more available to us now as a reptile keeping community that you can take your hobby in whichever avenue that you like. So when you start saying that one person's doing something wrong because it's not how you do it, or that you're so passionate about rat keeping that you won't listen to anybody else, or you're so passionate about there should be no rats at all that you won't have a dialogue with the breeders that you've probably bought your animals from anyway. Like, you're sort of the conversation is going in the wrong way. We should actually just be learning from each other. And, when something is proven, this is better for your animals, can you incorporate it into your husbandry? People should be open to listening to it, if there's evidence on the contrary, then people should be open to listening to that too. It's just, I think a lot of the conversation is kind of led by either people from maybe a generation where things haven't advanced quite as much and they're very adamant that their view is the only view, or people that are fairly new to the hobby and they see things slightly different. I don't know, I'm kind of waffling now, but it's a big hobby out there.
It is.
Well, it's also the thing I see with a lot of these studies people do with all sort of areas. They never treat the animals the same in the two different scenarios. I'm going to pick up on one that was brought up probably 6 months to a year ago, was where they studied hognose in Iraq versus hognose in a vivarium. Now, the vivarium was fully planted out, was fully kitted out, had all the lights and everything, all the enrichment. And the rack was just a plain tub with a water bowl and a hide. You can't do a complete comparison, in my opinion, that way. You need to have the enrichment there in both scenarios to see what difference just the lighting makes. Because it proved that way it was saying that brain growth was slower.
Right.
Unfortunately, the only way you study that is by killing the animal to study the brain after the amount of time. So you'll never see whether you can improve it because the animal no longer exists. But how can you compare a fully kitted out Viv for its enrichment and the way it provides for an animal to a completely plain tub, which not many people who keep tubs now keep them plain. They've got substrate, they've got hides, they've got water bowls, they've got other bits and pieces in there for them to climb over.
Yeah, I suppose. It's the question is, I guess it's, what is the question there? Because if, for example, the Viv was a lot bigger and the rack was smaller, but they were exactly the same in every other regard, then you might argue that having a bigger enclosure is more important. And then you could say, well, we push for bigger racks. Or if you know that the lighting is better in one than the other, then the lighting is the important thing and we need to incorporate that too. But I suppose, like you said, for a lot of people that have big collections and they keep them in racks, trying to move them all over to fully kitted bioactive vivariums is problematic at the very least. And then, but also if they've proven that this is the best way to keep your animal, telling new keepers that is the best way to keep their animal is something that I support, really.
Yeah, no, I agree with you there.
Yeah,
it's one of those arguments sold as time. And
just had a question come in, sorry. Tom, have you been to Madagascar yet?
Yes, I have. Yeah, quite a few years back now. Sorry, Andy, I cut you off there.
That's all right. Go on.
Okay, yeah, I'll just waffle about my travels a little bit. I did go to Madagascar. I did like Andasi Bay down to Ranamafana, Anja, which is a cool spot. It's right at the northern point of where you get the ringtail lemurs, but also we found a load of Dumarose boas, probably about 5 of them in a day, which was really cool. Being to the sort of southern half of Madagascar, it was a really, really cool experience. A few of my friends, Brian and Laura, do tours out all over the place. Herp, I don't know if you've heard of them, but they really recommended it. It's a really good
hold you at Mac.
Yes,
bookmark mate. Bookmark that, because Ellie was asking about tours in Madagascar.
She was. So have you connected with Ellie Tasky at all, Tom?
Yeah, is that Ellie's Exotic?
Yeah, that's right.
Yes, yeah. In fact, I've just seen that she's actually followed those guys, so I might, if she's looking for a recommendation, they're really good. I mean, there's a few other independent tour guides out there that are really good as well, but I guess the big trouble for me, and especially with this South Africa trip, is finding a group to go herping with. That's the like a bit of a challenge. But I really recommend those guys. I think they're doing Madagascar next year. They do all sorts of places, so you never really know what's going to be on the cards, but I'm pretty sure they're doing it. I'll let her know that they're good.
If you reach out to Ellie as well, because she's also interested in groups going abroad for herping, so maybe you could tie that in together. Obviously, the more that go, the costs are much spread out, aren't they? So she was saying last week, sorry Tom, she was just saying last week that everything she's done previously is the same as you. It's all self-funded, and it becomes quite a challenge when you are then trying to find reptiles and you haven't got that knowledge of the area and stuff. So she was keen to connect with people outside as well.
Yeah, well, me and Ellie were in Australia at the same time this year, so I actually reached out to her because the thing is, work does fund the bulk of the cresty stuff, some of the beardy stuff, some of the some other bits that we've got lined up for this year. I always try to tag on like a bit of a holiday or
Yeah.
try and do, you know, so I'm always like quite restricted on the when I can go to places, rather than, because sometimes you book a tour and then you pay for the exact flights to be there on the exact dates, and it
Yeah.
becomes mega expensive. But me and Ellie sort of overlapped in Australia a little bit, but she was on one side, I was on the other. But I did say, you know, we'll go out and go and find some stuff, and then sort of also reaching out to a few of the zookeepers that I know out there. Then they're sort of saying, "Oh, how long are you around for? You know, we can go out. We can." I linked up with a snake rescuer there, and I was like, oh, "I've got a couple of days, really. Like, I've
Yeah.
not got that long to
No.
pencil stuff in. But all it takes is then knowing that those people are open to going out and doing
Yeah.
stuff, and you can, yeah, make a nice
Yeah.
little group."
Well, it's
So
something I'd like to do one day.
when you go
Yeah.
out to these places and they are funded, do you have like your brief on what you want to achieve, and then the company's brief on what they want to achieve? I imagine there's going to be some overlap. So like, how does
Yeah.
that work?
So there's always, the thing is, they're usually the same. So there's basically the whole thing overlaps. So certainly with the crested gecko stuff and Blue River, they just wanted to know as much as we can about crested geckos through
Yeah.
observations. The habitat, obviously, there's a practical element to it, right? So the habitat, you can go out there, photograph it, film it, take your environmental readings, see it, like all of that is almost guaranteed. So you
Yeah.
can sort of lock that in. As long as you can get to the right spots where you know exactly where these animals are, you can at least document the habitat. And seasonal events and weather patterns was really big with this last one. Like, obviously, the first expedition we did to New Caledonia was in the wet season, and it was like completely different to the dry season. But then, for example, like the bearded dragon stuff, we went in spring, perfect time to find them. All the males are out, super bolshy. We probably found well over a dozen animals like in a couple of days. Like, it was, so you get in the observations, they were there. But if we went, for example, 2 weeks earlier, they wouldn't have been active at that point. You know, but if we'd gone two weeks later, you'd have had maybe a few females knocking around, but the males would have scarpered. So you're not finding them on the roads. It's almost so that you have to be really specific with these things. But in that, you also end up with a level, not a level of bias, because we never claim to say that we're doing a complete holistic years-long study
Yeah.
on these animals. But you might see, for example, loads of flowers because we're there in spring. But you fast forward 2 months and it's actually a bit more desolate. But I think the point is showing. So, like, when there is a trip, I sort of think, right, what are the big misconceptions that are actually potentially very damaging to animal welfare? Like, you know, people aren't keeping their dragons hot enough. You know, but these dragons are overweight. There's an obesity crisis in bearded dragons. And, you know, and with that, if your temperatures are even 5 degrees less than they should be, but your bearded dragon's also got a fat layer of fat on their belly, you know, that it needs to penetrate, you're then grossly underheating these bearded dragons. And so, for example, like one of the videos we did really like that went out that did really well was I was measuring the surface temperature of some of these basking sites, and they are mega hot, you know, 55 degrees plus. Now, that's not necessarily to say you should use a hot rock that has IRC that reaches 55 degrees. That's not what we're angling at. But when somebody tells you, yeah, these bearded dragons are out in 40 degrees ambient most of the day, and they've got a huge amount of infrared with high power density smashing this road, and they're still out there basking in it, having those hot temperatures isn't the end of the world, you know. And everyone's saying, well, they're not in a terrarium, they're not in this. Well, get your ventilation right and consider how the sun sort of changes throughout the day as well, you know. So yeah, like there is a level of planning with you know, misinformation that it could be myth busted or anything like that, or just showcasing certain elements. I've also think this is all fairly new to me as well, so even getting the right camera angles and doing something kind of interesting, you know, with my hands, or, you know, picking up some stuff like that does a lot better than I'd have never have realized that when I was like a journalist just writing stuff. But that's starting to come a bit more natural to me as well. So whereas the first trip to, say, New Caledonia, we knew that we wanted observations of geckos, we wanted to see what the environment's like, we wanted photos of all the fruits and all this different stuff. Well, that was the brief. And then this latest one is like, right, but I want to get some footage at this angle, and I know that this is going to be something I could do my voiceover on. You could, so over time, I think these things are going to hopefully be a lot more professional. But yeah, like circling back to the question, it's very much what Blue River wants is information that can improve our understanding and of animal welfare and crested geckos, and that's exactly what EK wants. Now they will also have a list of all the fruits that we found out there to do studies on that I'm not going to publish straight away.
No, absolutely
they've
not.
also got so that sort of thing. There'll be product development side of things there that they'll be able to hopefully build some really interesting stuff from. But broadly, content wise, it's pretty much exactly the same.
No, that's good. And it's good to see that you're going out there for your knowledge and to help educate. So you have this mindset like, we need to get this to help this myth, this misinformation, whatever, or to improve. And they're also asking that question as well. So to hear that there are suppliers out there asking that is incredible.
I mean, I really believe that most brands actually want that knowledge. They all want what's best for the animals. I just think and I've been very lucky to be working with brands that are willing to actually take that step forward for the in situ stuff. Which I've been fortunate with it. But I do think that most brands have that. They want to do what's best for the animals, because ultimately that's what the consumer wants. They want to know that their animal's happy and healthy. So over time, I don't think we're cutting corners like perhaps we were in the very early years of herpetoculture. I think most brands are developing off the back of knowledge, but it's really good to be sort of somewhere at the front of that kind of development process.
No, 100%. Like if we look at Arcadia with the Evo RX, the snake sausage, it might be quite controversial, but when I was speaking to Arcadia, the Pat show, they were saying that its composition is almost spec for spec, the same as an American field mouse, which the Klubras out there eat. So the fact that they've got those answers and they've got those reasons, it's incredible to see that brands are going that far to see what the composition of a field mouse is to replicate for foods. It can only get better when you've got brands doing this. They will be in competition with each other and they will push each other, and you've got someone like Thomas, who's obviously an advocate for welfare and spectrum lighting. The only people that will benefit from this is the consumer. 100%.
Yeah,
and then obviously in turn our animals as well. How do you find it? Do you find that your publications do influence people? Do you get a lot of messages asking?
So like EK is essentially a one-man band in many ways. Since obviously with the magazine, we had a designer working with me at the beginning, and then sort of worked with freelance designers, worked with a lot of freelance authors, and then sort of some of the in situ stuff my girlfriend's actually filmed for me as well. So I don't want to take all the credit here, but in terms of actually presenting some of this stuff, managing the website, doing back then subscriptions and pulling the whole magazine together, responding to all the messages and all the comments, all of that is me. So any feedback that we get, I see it, but that's sort of like a double-edged sword, because sometimes someone will say, your videos really helped me improve my animal setup, and I genuinely feel quite moved by that. I'm like, well, it's all worth it. Something's going right. And then sometimes you'll get some snarky comment about something, just falls through the net, and you go, oh, shut up. So I'm very invested in sort of every part of it. But when people actually say, I really loved your, like the gargoyle gecko example, help me, even if it's as much as swapping one branch out for another branch, and that animal happens to be more active because of it. Or someone goes, I've fed my leopard gecko on crickets all its life, but I decided to try this new live food and he loved it. Great. Their varied diet's really good. Or I've been feeding my bearded dragon strawberries for the last however long. I've realized that actually that's a bit too sugary for them. I've decided to stop doing that. All of these little changes I feel not necessarily responsible for, because this is stuff that's out there. People are discussing it. None of it's that crazy. But when somebody says, you know, something that you've done or some content you've put out has helped me and my animals or my hobby, or helped me make the right connections, yeah, I absolutely love it.
No, it's great. It really is good to see. If you could change one thing about reptile keeping culture, what would it be? Or have you got something you would like to change about reptile keeping culture?
Oh, dangerous.
Yeah, that is dangerous.
It's a big question.
No, I
It's a
don't
big
know. I
question.
feel like I should have probably had a think about this before I answer it. I would like I guess the kind of collector mentality sometimes. It's a double. It's two sides of it, because sometimes I think it's important that people have exposure to lots of different species, and that's the only way species become established. But it would be nice to see people focus more on improving the lives of the animals they do have, rather than maybe chopping and changing. And that's just off the top of my head, really, you know.
Yeah.
The
Because I do
Pokemon mentality.
yeah, a little bit, you know, because when for example, with herping, I notice myself actually being a little bit funny with things. So, like, I'll be looking for an animal for hours and hours and hours, and I finally find it, and it's not the right color morph that I wanted to photograph. Or, oh, you know, we've done all this work, you know, we found a dozen small brown frogs that are super unique, endemic, rare species, but really you want to find that blue one because it makes a nice photo. And like, I think like it is just part of, you know, just the way that we engage with things. But it would be, you know, it would be nice to see people probably think more along the lines of, these are the animals that I have, what can I do to give them the very best possible life, than maybe switch into something else. And especially, you know, with a lot of influencers and YouTubers and stuff, there's a lot of money in having a lot of animals, which I think had its time, and I think that bubble's burst now. I think a lot of people out there want to watch an influencer that has really nice setups, rather than, you know, a reptile room tour with 500 different species in it. Like, I think we're shifting there slightly, but you know,
we've had enough reptile tours over the years that we've all seen them now.
Yeah,
and it's the ones that I mean, I find I gravitate towards when you get the more unique species that aren't shown off. The stuff that you don't tend to see.
Yeah, and it's good, because those people that work with those species, there's a reason people don't see them so much. I mean, sometimes they can be actually surprisingly hardy, but a lot of the time they're tough animals to keep. So when somebody has done so well with that species that they'll show it off in a YouTube video that probably get hundreds of thousands of views, that is an achievement in many ways. It's just if that animal never makes an appearance in the next one and that kind of thing, that you start going, oh, right, okay.
Yeah, no, I mean, I'd love to get involved with rough green snakes and snail eaters and things like that as well. More of your sort of insectivore style snakes.
And
because
yes,
they're only ever wild caught stuff you get most of the time anyway. But the hobby needs more of that stuff as well, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Because not everyone wants to feed a rodent.
No.
And that eliminates a lot of potential keepers in the long run.
Yeah.
Of people who want to be involved, but they have a fear or a phobia of rodents, for example.
Yeah, well, there's animals that are so well suited to like just modern life and modern reptile keeping. Like some of the smallest, we like say the slug eaters and rough greens, and they're really pretty little snakes, great personalities, and like you say, don't need rodents. You can set them up in a really nice, well planted kind of setup, and yeah, like there's a lot of species out there that if people probably took the time to actually breed, and you know, over a long period of time, you'd end up them becoming quite well established, because there's got to be a market out there for them. But, you know,
the problem is a lot of people don't do it because wild caught are so many come through. There's no
Yeah.
money in it. A
Mm.
lot of the hobby is damaged by the attitude of, well, there's no money in that.
Yeah, well, look at green and owls, like they really, there's thousands and thousands of them coming through. They're perfect terrarium animals. They're, well, some of the brightest colored lizards you can get. They've got huge, like, dewlaps. They interact with one another. They're like ideal for a display setup. But you go, oh, green and owl, been knocking around for a long time and they're coming in, who's going to take the time to breed green and owls when somebody can get them in at a fiver a pop? Like, it just doesn't add up. But they should be more popular.
The thing is, you can't take the attitude of, I'm breeding this just for money. Now, don't get me
No.
wrong, I breed some of my stuff and the money is very helpful and it will pay to go further. But if you can establish stuff that then stops the wild caught side of it as well, you're helping the conservation.
Yeah.
And if you're
Yeah.
helping the conservation, you're then in the long run pushing out the need for these animals to be bred because they're not bringing them in from the wild anymore, which then means the ecosystems are reviving.
Yeah. Well, that's it. You alleviate some pressure, which we could all be doing a bit more of. Yeah. It's it's a complicated thing.
Emperor scorpions.
Hmm.
You used to be able to get them 10 to the dozen. Sort of, they couldn't give them away at one point. And now you pay 120, 150 quid for one because they cite
Really?
each appendix 1.
Yeah, and all the paperwork. And I imagine anyone that's breeding them, it will be drowning in paperwork with baby scorpions.
Exactly. And the thing is, because people were so ready to take the wild caught stuff, it's why it's got to that. And if we keep doing it, every species will go that way.
Yeah.
Which then eliminates the hobby.
Yeah, exactly. There's definitely. But this is the thing. Like, I saw a report the other day that had come from, is it like a biodiversity? They call themselves biodiversity centre for something. And I genuinely think that a lot of the stuff they're doing is really, really good. But you read into it a little bit more and you realise that it's the animal rights lobbyists behind a lot of this rhetoric. But they basically published this report on number of imports and exports in and out of America and grouped them all together. So whether it's captive bred, wild caught, whatever, it was all for the headlines, and then used the kind of, I guess, the sucker punch of 30% of these animals are wild caught. Well, if it wasn't for the fact that all these numbers were in their millions, it probably wouldn't have done the rounds on social media quite as much. So I think it's important that people recognize these numbers. But you've got animal rights lobbyists that, because I was quite appalled by it. You look at it and you go, bloody hell, these are huge numbers. But if you're going to group all fish, invertebrates, like everything all into the same number, that is going to be a huge number. So unfortunately, I commented, because I thought I usually keep myself way out of these debates, but I said it's a shame because actually we should be trying to reduce the number of wild caught animals in people's homes. I don't know whether that applies so much in the UK, really, especially since some of the big wholesalers have stopped doing wild caught. But definitely in America, those numbers are massive, because most wild caught animals don't make very good pets, really. It doesn't mean that people shouldn't try to work with the species and get them imported legally and with the right paperwork, to establish an ex situ population. I'm not against that necessarily, but why would anyone opt for a wild caught animal of a species that is captive bred? Just seems bizarre. It's usually, well, I'd imagine a financial incentive there, and yet they don't make as greater pets. So it's I wanted to support the document. I wanted to share it and say this is shocking and you guys are doing a great job, but actually when it's been hijacked and grossly misrepresents the hobby in its entirety, you can't help but feel a bit disappointed, because you're like, if we were just having a nice little chat and they've got an expert from different sides of the coin and different, and they all opened a dialogue with one another, we might have something quite powerful there where we say, we shouldn't be bringing in this particular species in this number. It's like tokay geckos coming from Indonesia in hundreds of thousands. They're exported in huge numbers. And most of them go into like Asian sort of street food stalls. They get barbecued on a stick and given to tourists in Thailand, you know. And yet everyone's up in arms about the idea of a gecko coming out of captivity into out of the wild and into captivity. And actually, tokay geckos have really taken off in the US, and I think recently people like to tokay. So hopefully there will be more captive bred. We won't need quite as many in the hobby.
Here
But
comes Bruce.
you know,
I just reached over to get him, but I've had a leak on some of the tanks, so I've had to strip them out. But I've got a 1.1 male and female, Bruce and Sheila, and Bruce is incredibly tame. Well, he tolerates me a lot. So like I can stroke him, I can turn him upside down, I can stroke his belly. He's really relaxed. Sheila,
and that's a tokay.
That's a tokay.
Yeah.
Honestly, he's so good. He's so good.
Wow.
And like I love them. And Sheila, I barely see her. In fact,
She's a bit of a demon.
Oh,
Are these the babies?
yeah.
Nice. Well, that's it. You're doing good work there because, you know, once people see just how great these tokays are and you can get them captive bred, I think they'll just go from strength to strength. But it still doesn't solve the problem of hundreds of thousands of them being sent off to Asia to, you know, end up in food. So
No.
The problem is we can't stop that. That's the,
No, we
that's
can't,
the problem. And
we
as
get
much as
grouped
all
into
these
it.
activists grab us for having them as pets, there's all this fight for positive lists, especially like in Scotland. You can't use that as the sole reason to stop it. Because if we didn't have them coming in as pets, we were breeding them, the food markets destroy it. Whilst they move as pets, there's the CITES and all that get involved. The food markets don't care where they come from. They don't care how they get them.
That was one of the issues that Dave Kaufman raised in his Ball Python documentary. I don't think the overall documentary was what it should have been. I was expecting more, but what he did highlight that, you know, there is a massive demand for pythons in the food industry in these third world countries. So, you know, the export isn't the risk anymore. There are other factors at play when it comes to these animals and their numbers.
Yeah, exactly. You know, they don't exist in this kind of like vacuum as well. You know, there's always these things like that same report, for example, did a little box out feature about golden mantella, saying, you know, 20 odd thousand get exported from Europe into America every year, or no, get exported into America, no name of where it's coming from, every year. Well, there's I don't know if there's 20,000 golden mantella left in the wild, so they're obviously captive bred, obviously bred in huge numbers. I know a bunch of people with loads of mantella can't get rid of them quick enough, and they go to the US where they're probably not so well established, and it's like, well, at the same time, I have seen golden mantella in the wild, and it was depressing. It was like super depressing. The population we were meant to visit had been burnt down. So already that small population that the guys went to a few years prior had been destroyed. And then you fast forward to that year, and then we were desperately trying to find a little patch of forest, and that same patch of forest was on fire. It just happened to be there was irrigation channels dug around the forest that they needed for the crops nearby. That forest was still standing, but it was a patch like, I don't know, maybe a mile squared. Like, it was tiny. It was like, and it was completely void of anything. It wasn't going to connect to anything else. So eventually, when all the rice has been put through and the land is no good anymore, they would probably just burn that down as well, and then it's goodbye to that population. And so citing that there's 20,000 of them actually is a good thing, you know.
Well, actually, I've just had a quick Google, and they reckon, based on recent field surveys, it's estimated that fewer than 2,500 mature golden mantella individuals remain in the wild.
Yeah, I can believe it. Yeah.
That's 2,500.
What we need to remember as well is that when we do get this, the animal rights lobbying for it, they're not lobbying for welfare. Then they don't care whether we've got them in a rub, a rack, a drawer, 6x6x6 enclosure for some dart frogs, or somebody's built a whole shed down the bottom for a water monitor. They're not interested. They don't want animals in captivity, full stop. And sob stories will always sell better, you know, and that's where we've got to be thankful for people like yourself who are in the field, who can report, look, here's something that's no longer here. You know,
and the magazine as well, because you can still get the back issues online, can't you?
Yes, yeah. So there's, well, actually no. So you can still get them. Yeah, if you with a membership, you can access every digital copy, but the physical copies just aren't being produced anymore. We haven't done them for a while. So
it's still there. So people still wanted to go back and say someone's listened to this and they've not come across the magazine. They might be new to the hobby the last year, 18 months. They could log on. It was about 40 quid, I think, for the year's membership or something, wasn't it?
Yeah, I mean, now it's digital. I think it's like a few quid a month. I don't think it's very much. It's been a little while since I've gone back and looked at it. But yeah, like the digital subscription is not very much at all. You can jump on there. There's 40 odd issues of the magazine. In the future, and this is something that I've been meaning to do for quite a while, is I'd like to build more digital content that goes directly onto the website and then does social media maybe a little bit later. So there's a sort of like a Patreon style thing that gives people access to all the magazines and, you know, a bit of privileges there. But it's just been sort of setting up. Like, it's been such a busy couple of years, you know. So
no, because I loved some of the articles in the magazine, because you covered species that people wouldn't have thought of as well in there.
Yeah,
and it wasn't just reptiles, it was amphibians, it was mammals, it was exotics, which is what we're pushing for with this as well. Because at the end of the day, if the reptile hobby falls, which one's next?
Yeah, well, I think every sort of hobbies took a bit of a hit, but it's even like zoos will be next in line as well. Like, you know, you've got to think these a lot of activists and that sort of thing, that mentality, don't want you to keep anything. And it's just frustrating, because I think there's such a similarity between the way that a lot of us think. Like, I do genuinely, people wouldn't be trying so hard to improve their animal welfare standards if they thought that everything was just perfect. Like, but there's a way of doing it where you accept that actually there's so many benefits for keeping reptiles in captivity. There just is. And, you know, even that relationship with nature, that, you know, people, in many ways, some of these reptiles are actually better suited pets for a lot of people. Like, there's a million different reasons. I don't need to list them all, but it becomes frustrating when there's a target on our heads for certain things, but you just want people to be aware of what these things are and try and make steps towards improving them on our end. But also we need to have like like with the zoos, for example, why is there not a closer relationship between private keepers and zoos? You know, this always looks like bad press for a zoo to work with a private keeper, and it's like there's got to be a tipping point where you go, actually, most animals that have been bred in captivity successfully in these world firsts and stuff have been by private keepers. There's sometimes a unscrupulous backstory to them, don't get me wrong. Like, that's what we need to be focusing on and fixing and, you know, adjusting in the hobby. But those first scientific breakthroughs, and the reason that these zoos are doing so well with the species, are largely because of a private keeper at some point. And like, I think there needs to be a point of tighter regulation, but self-regulation, where people that know about the hobby, people that know about the industry, and people that, and conservationists that work in the field, come together and actually have a broader kind of like input on the way the whole thing's done, rather than now when you've got a certain section, even the hobby itself, all, you know, bickering with one another, and actually you know, we all want the same thing, which is allowing people, like, just loving reptiles, you know, being passionate about reptiles and keeping and breeding them and being successful with them, but ultimately inspiring others and inspiring ourselves with our relationship with them.
So when's Exotic Keepers going to do its first expo?
Oh, good question. I would love to. I like it's something that I've really been pushing for a while. I guess it's just all this sort of well, the time really it takes to do these things. You know, I'll be at so there's a Biaza. I say this, I'm just going to slag off zoos, but actually I'm going to be at the Biaza Rorg conference, and they are quite welcoming. We're going to be sponsoring them and trying to build that relationship for this year, but also the AHH BHS conference as well. I'll be at that doing a talk on crested geckos. So I go to that every year. Absolutely brilliant conference.
That's
Good mix.
Drayton Manor, the 21st and 22nd of March.
It is, yeah. Yeah, its tickets are available now. I don't know. I don't think they've released the full lineup yet, but yeah,
No,
I will be there anyway.
85 quid for the weekend.
Yeah, but
Plus
it's every
hotel.
year. Yeah, so worth it. There's a good mix of all the guest speakers are great. There's a good mix of people from all different backgrounds. Good turnout from a few brands as well. So they're good. I mean, I would love to do an EK Expo that does everything. I don't know, like just has a lot of input from a lot of different people, and maybe brings those two worlds together of like what an expo could be and what a conference is, but it hasn't been done successfully yet. I don't think. I think there's been a little bit of, the IHS has tried doing a few conferences and lectures and that kind of thing, and apparently it's not being received very well at some of these events, or they don't get.
West Midlands, the group there do quite well with their conference.
Right.
It's more amphibian based. I might be talking out my arse with that, but I know that they do one that is very well received.
Yeah. Yeah, I've seen a few bits.
Individuals. Sorry, Tom.
Yeah, no. Yeah, I think a few of my friends have done talks at that meetup, and it always looks good fun. It's like in a pub as well, isn't it?
I believe so. Yeah.
Nice.
But the thing is, what a lot of this is when I say expo, I'm not looking for animals on tables. I'm looking at Ansel the Rock do it as well, actually. The invert lot, where they get like a family fun day with the talks and merch and brands be able to showcase stuff, and you're not buying animals necessarily.
No,
because that's not what expos need to be about now. Expos need to be about improving.
Yeah, but I'd love to see an expo where like people are permitted to bring what they breed, an example of, and their table is like an educational stand. Would be really cool, where say somebody who like Lee with his chameleons or leaf-tailed geckos, or you've got another. The problem is like it's that breeder / business. There's a load of red tape with it. I don't know all the ins and outs, but I would love to see an expo that has the animals there, so people bring their kids along and they put, whether they're that invested or not, but there's no animals for sale. They're not in tubs necessarily. They're in like display Vivaria, and somebody can say, this is what I do, this is what I breed, here's an animal that I'm really passionate about, maybe has a price list to take orders for another time, maybe take some photographs or something, so there's still a incentive for these breeders to be there.
A showcase event.
Yeah, but it becomes like a proper showcase event, educational talks, all that kind of thing. So it's a nice little merge of still getting to see some unusual animals and learn about them at your own pace as you move around, but with slightly different optics, And I think it could be done. It would be
it's
interesting.
We've spoken about in the RSUK group quite a few times.
Right.
Is redesigning the way that it's done. To meet the needs of the hobby, but also encourage people to attend, because it then removes the impulse purchase.
Yes, yeah.
Which is one of the biggest things that the activist groups go out against with any expo, any show, anything like that.
Well, they've really struggled over the last couple of years to prevent the IHS from going ahead because of welfare issues. Whether you believe that the right welfare levels or not is irrelevant. The local councils and the local authorities are happy with the welfare issues that are in place. So what they've started doing is they've started reporting people for illegal animal sales, because they're saying they're not hobbyists, they're businesses. you know, people are being investigated for being a business rather than a hobbyist, and it's become a lot of red tape. So a lot of people then became scared of going. I remember the first time I went to an IHS breeders meeting, and I seen on my table, you know, first name and second name, hobbyist breeder only, we're not a business. And, you know, I was like, I didn't really understand it. And then it was like, obviously finding out that because they can't get the shows shut down on welfare, it was then an issue. It was then, right, let's attack the individual breeders that were there, which is such a shame. Yeah, and then obviously we lost Doncaster, which was a massive blow.
And then there were the issues at Milton Keynes.
Milton Keynes was a great venue. It was great.
Oh,
so it was.
Yeah, I understand. I wish I'd gone to that, but I was working. I couldn't get out of a job that weekend. That's literally on my doorstep, Milton Keynes. It's an hour and a half away from me.
Yeah. Whereabouts are you based?
I'm based in Didcot, Oxford. Sure.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I lived in Whitney for a little while.
Okay, not too far from me then.
Yeah.
Mac, you're up in Leicester, aren't you?
I am. Well, over in Leicester. I don't think it's too far up from Didcot, is it? A little bit up.
It's about a couple of hours.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Whereabouts are you based then, Tom?
Oh, well, my parents are like Harborough, so I'll be back down in Oxford soon. But we're basically since the last trip gone back for Christmas and then fly out again on the 11th of Jan. So sort of in between houses at the minute. But yeah, between Leicestershire and Oxfordshire.
Where did you say Harborough?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's literally up the road,
Harborough.
isn't it? Not far at all.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Not far at all. I've just noticed the time, and we've kind of gone way over planned, but I do have a couple of quick fire questions just to finish off. Sure. Just give me a sec.
Yeah.
And I'll pull that back up.
But this is the thing, I like the way these chats go when we don't realise how long we've gone.
No.
It's not felt forced, and it means that there's room to say later in the year, have you back, Tom, and we can discuss some of the other stuff you've done throughout the year.
Yeah. Well, there's plenty to get stuck into.
It's a never-ending hobby.
So, first question is, without disclosing too much, if you can't, what's next? I don't mean South Africa, because obviously that's kind of personal time away. But, you know, so what's for EK and, you know, field work? What's next?
So we've got something lined up pretty soon that I can't say too much about just yet. But we've got the documentaries for the Crested Gecko Part 2 and the documentary on bearded dragons as well that will be available, well, hopefully by about March time. So in terms of actual sort of content and stuff, there'll be that, and then there is an exhibition under wraps lined up for later this year.
Yeah.
So you've got some stuff coming up that you can't talk about, but it's going to be fun, it's going to be interesting, and everyone should watch this space.
Yeah, absolutely. It's going to be a very cool exploration of the habitats of a very popular pet reptile.
We'll leave it at that before you say something you shouldn't.
Yeah.
Because I bet you're itching to tell the world, but you can't.
Oh yeah. That's the biggest trouble with this. Is it's like I know that there's things that need to all be solidified first, but we did. So we originally planned to do Pakistan last year. Everything was booked. Yeah. Like we've got our reserve, we've got our guides in this particular reserve. Flights, everything, and then about 2 weeks before it was on like the brink of war with Pakistan and India, like literally just before we were about to get on the flight. So we had to just cancel it, which sucked. But hopefully there's space to do something similar.
Do you have a favorite species to write about or talk about video?
Not really, no. I quite like having like a bit of a versatile background. I think people want me to say crested geckos, but that's sort of something that I find them fascinating, don't get me wrong, but actually probably the diversity of the geckos of New Caledonia, I find that really interesting. I quite like a wide range of something like poison frogs. I really like talking about poison frogs, the different dendrobateds of yeah, so not really a favourite one. No, boring answer.
Perfect. Do you think there's a most misunderstood reptile?
The first thing that sprung to my mind was bearded dragon.
Yeah.
Mainly because it's seen as this perfect beginner reptile, and in many ways it is. In many more ways it isn't. So yeah, let's go with bearded dragon.
Yeah. Do you have one must-read article or one must-watch video that you've posted, or one source of information that you think somebody should go and watch or read? It doesn't even have to be yours, but maybe one of each if anything comes to mind.
Okay. Must watch. I think the latest stuff with bearded dragon, I did like a little bearded dragon habitat walkthrough thing. So I pointed out a few quick things within 20 seconds, and I think all of those things could be implemented quite easily into captivity. So I'm going to say that as something worth watching. And I also did it a few days ago, so I can actually remember it.
Yeah.
That's the one with the little pond where you go to the shrubs, then you go to the substrate.
Yeah.
Isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah. I thought it was just so easy to do it there and then. I was like, well, that's something, and that's something, and that's something. And yeah, it was, so it's been well received anyway. And yeah, quite quick and easy.
Agreed on that.
Yeah. And then other stuff that people should go and watch. God, I'm so wrapped up in where stuff is bad.
It's fun.
It?
It's
like,
fun.
I mean, I don't know. Like, I watched David Attenborough London the other day and thought it was thoroughly enjoyable, and thought it actually anything that gets people more connected with wildlife on their doorstep, people going out and herping in the UK, getting themselves in amongst nature, I think is brilliant. So let's go with that. The man himself.
Yeah, perfect. I've shared all the EK links in the chat as well, so if you're not following Tom and EK, make sure you drop them a follow and subscribe for the upcoming content that is planned. And do you have a final message to the community, Tom?
I guess just, I don't know.
Carry on enjoying things.
Carry on enjoying things. Yeah. I mean, if I was to say anything about this, the last few years and going out and finding animals in the wild, cresties, beardies, like broadly, we're doing really well. Like crested gecko husbandry, some of it, like the readings we were getting are bang on what people had given them. Like our relationship with animals is really good. Like I expect sometimes to walk into a habitat and go, this is so far removed from what we're doing. And don't get me wrong, there are, especially in the beardie community, there are some outdated practices. But when we look at the way that we're keeping animals and keeping them for full lifespans, and there's always room to improve, but we are doing broadly very well. And I think these minor steps towards the, improvement are, perfect for us. Let's just keep improving gradually, because we are starting from a very, very good place.
Perfect. Tom, thank you very much. Really appreciate your time this evening. And then hopefully after you've done the big reveal and you've been out and done your next expedition, that we can get you on to talk about the expedition. Now that we've had this sort of intro into Exotic Keeper, really appreciate it. So thank you very much for your time.
Yeah, no worries. Yeah, thank you guys.
Cheers. There was just one question from Katie that I missed. Did you film the stuff from Madagascar?
No, I didn't. So, I've got photos and bits and bobs, and I actually wrote a couple of articles on Mantella and different chameleons that we found, but there's no like reels or vlog or anything like that from Madagascar. So fingers crossed we can go back.
Go back there, yeah.
Yeah,
that's perfect.
Angela says bearded dragons are the best, but sadly one of the most surrendered reptiles.
I'm going to step in on that one and say they're probably most surrendered because people approach them as the beginner species for their children. And unfortunately, kids lose interest and parents can't be bothered.
Yeah.
And that's my opinion on that.
Yeah, and then Katie says, good night all. Thank you, Tom, for your time tonight. Been a good one. Thanks, M.A.D Duo 2. Katie, thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Katie.
Yes, thank you, everyone.
Okay.
Right, thank you very much.
All the best, everyone, and we will see you on the next one. Andy, who's next before we go?
Jordan on the 9th from Peculiar Pets.
Brilliant. And Jordan's just shared the episodes tonight, so well done. Thank you, Jordan. Happy days. I will see you all in the next one. All the best. Take care. Bye.
Bye-bye.